The notification arrived on Commander David Walsh's tablet at 0600 hours, jolting him from his morning coffee. A formal request from the Galactic Matrimonial Council, written in the flowing script of the Valoran people. He read it 3 times before the words fully registered. Leora Tanway, recently widowed member of the Valoran High Houses, was requesting his hand in marriage. The ceremony needed to happen within 72 hours, or she would lose everything. David had met Leora exactly twice. Once during a diplomatic reception on the orbital station above Villora Prime, where she had smiled politely while her late husband discussed trade agreements. The second time was at her husband's funeral just 8 days ago, where David had attended as the human embassy's representative. She had been composed, elegant, her silver skin shimmering with barely contained grief. Now she wanted to marry him. He found her in the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars. The artificial gravity made her long white hair float slightly, defying physics in that particular way Valoran physiology allowed. She turned when she heard his footsteps, and those large violet eyes met his with desperate hope. "You read my proposal," she said. Not a question. "I did." David moved to stand beside her. "Want to explain why you're asking a human you barely know to marry you in 3 days?" Leora's fingers twisted together, a nervous gesture that seemed too human for her alien grace. Valoran law is ancient and unforgiving. When a member of the High Houses dies without direct heirs, their spouse has 1 solar cycle to remarry or forfeit all property and status to the deceased's extended family. My husband's cousins are already circling like carrion birds. 1 cycle is what, 10 days? 7 of your days? Yes. 3 remain. She looked back at the stars. I loved my husband, Commander. We were together for 15 years. But his family never approved of me. I came from a lower house, you see. They tolerated the match only because he insisted, but now that he's gone, they want to erase me completely. David leaned against the transparent aluminum viewing port. So you need a husband fast. Why me? There must be dozens of eligible Valoran men who would jump at the chance to marry into a high house. There are. Her voice was bitter. All of them friends or business associates of my late husband's family. Marry any of them, and I become a puppet. They would control my assets, my choices, my life. I would be a prisoner in gilded chains. And a human gives you independence. A human gives me freedom. She turned to face him fully. Our marriage contract would be temporary. 1 year, as required by law to satisfy the remarriage clause. After that, we divorce quietly. You return to your duties. I retain my autonomy and my late husband's estate. No one gets hurt. Except that's not quite true, is it? David studied her carefully. You're asking me to append my life, tie myself legally to an alien culture I barely understand, and play husband for a year. That's a significant ask. Leora stepped closer. She was tall for a Valoran woman, nearly matching his height. I can compensate you financially. The estate is worth 40 million credits. I would give you 5 million for your trouble. I don't need your money. Then what do you need? The desperation was creeping into her voice now. Please, Commander. You are my only option. Every other path leads to subjugation or exile. I have 2 days left. Tell me what you require, and if it is within my power, it is yours. David was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a transport ship glided past, its running lights blinking in the darkness. He thought about duty and honor, about the woman standing before him, who had already lost so much. If I do this, he said slowly, I need honesty. Complete transparency. No games, no hidden agendas. We're partners in this arrangement, equals. And when the year is up, we part as friends. Hope bloomed across her features. You are agreeing? I'm considering it seriously. But I need to understand what I'm getting into. What does Valoran marriage actually entail? Relief made her shoulders sag. Come, I will explain everything. They spent the next 6 hours in her quarters, going over documents and customs. Valoran marriage was surprisingly straightforward from a legal standpoint, a contract signed before witnesses, a brief ceremony, and registration with the planetary government. The cultural aspects were more complex. Married couples are expected to share living quarters, Leora explained, highlighting a section of text on her display. It does not have to be constant cohabitation, but frequent enough to avoid suspicion of fraud. I can arrange shore leave rotations, David said. My posting here is for another 18 months anyway. There are also social expectations. Public appearances together, attendance at certain functions. My position requires maintaining image and reputation. I can handle formal events. She hesitated, a pale blue flush coloring her cheeks. And there is the matter of physical proximity. David raised an eyebrow. I thought you said this was purely legal. It is. But Valoran culture is tactile. Married couples show affection publicly holding hands, standing close, occasional embraces. Nothing scandalous, but enough to appear genuine. If we seem cold and distant, people will question the validity of our union. I can manage appropriate displays of affection, David said carefully. But I need to know where the boundaries are, what's expected and what's off limits. Leora met his gaze directly. The marriage need not be consummated. That is your choice and yours alone. But we must appear as though genuine affection exists between us. Warmth, companionship, partnership. Can you provide that? Can you? A small smile touched her lips. I believe I can learn to like you, Commander Walsh. You are direct, honest, and you have not once leered at me or made inappropriate suggestions despite my vulnerable position. That speaks well of your character. The ceremony took place 2 days later in the Hall of Eternal Bonds, a beautiful domed structure on Velora Prime's surface. David wore his dress uniform, medals polished to perfection. Leora was stunning in traditional white robes that seemed to flow like water around her form. The ceremony itself was brief. They spoke their vows before the matrimonial officiate, signed the contract, and exchanged the traditional Valoran bonding bracelets, thin bands of silver that would mark them as married for the duration of their union. When the officiate announced them joined, Leora surprised him by rising on her toes and pressing her forehead gently against his. A Valoran kiss, he realized. Chaste but intimate. Thank you, she whispered, so softly only he could hear. You have saved my life today. The reception that followed was awkward. Leora's late husband's family attended because protocol demanded it, their expressions ranging from barely concealed fury to cold calculation. They studied David like a specimen under glass, clearly trying to determine what angle he was playing. But Leora never left his side. She held his hand, laughed at his attempts at Valoran humor, and introduced him to her friends with genuine warmth. By the end of the evening, David found himself enjoying her company. She was intelligent, witty, and had a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. Your family looks ready to murder me, he murmured as they danced, or rather, swayed awkwardly to Valoran music he didn't quite understand the rhythm of. My late husband's family, she corrected. And yes, they are quite displeased. But there is nothing they can do now. The marriage is legal and binding. No buyer's remorse? She looked up at him, those violet eyes thoughtful. Ask me again in a year, Commander. David, he said. If we're married, you should probably use my first name. David, she repeated, testing the sound. It suits you. Strong but gentle. They settled into an unexpected routine over the following weeks. David arranged his duty schedule to spend 4 days on the station, and 3 on Velora Prime. Leora's estate was massive, a sprawling compound, overlooking crystal seas with more than enough room for them to maintain separate lives while appearing together when needed. But gradually, they began to occupy the same spaces. David would find Leora in the library, reading human literature and asking questions about Earth customs. She would join him for breakfast on the terrace, bringing him tea prepared exactly as he liked it. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. She told him about Valoran history, about her childhood in the lower houses, about the husband she had loved and lost. He shared stories of Earth, of his career in the Space Corps, of the family he missed back home. One evening, 3 months into their arrangement, they sat together watching the sunset. Valora's twin moons were rising, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. "I have a confession," Leora said quietly. David turned to look at her. "What kind of confession?" "When I asked you to marry me, I told you I chose you because you were human, because you offered independence." She was quiet for a moment. "That was true, but not the whole truth." "What's the rest?" "I chose you because at my husband's funeral, you were the only person who looked at me with genuine compassion. Everyone else saw a widow to pity or an opportunity to exploit. You saw a person in pain." She turned to meet his eyes. "I needed someone who could see me, David, not my status or my wealth or my family connections. Just me." Something shifted in his chest. "I do see you, Leora, and I like what I see." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "I was promised 1 year with a stranger. Instead, I seem to be gaining a friend. Is that what